This is FestivalPass Stories, a podcast series is told by the people who create and make festivals come to life. You will go behind the stage, kitchen, or studio door to hear the stories of passion and inspiration that started some of the world's most beloved festivals. Hear the startup stories and how an idea went from what if to what's next. All right, friends, this is FestivalPass Stories, where we take you behind the stage, the studio, the kitchen door, to hear those stories of passion and inspiration that are behind the world's favorite festivals. And man, we cannot wait to get back to those festivals next year. And there are no behind the scenes or scenes at all without the talented people who produce the festivals. And the best people have the hardware to prove it. So please give a warm, as you can see in her background, holiday welcome or Christmas welcome. Let's just say Christmas welcome to the Emmy Award-winning producer, Mimi Rene of Next Week Productions. Mimi, what is going on?
Hi, thank you for having me.
Thanks for being here. I know that's a loaded question these days. What's going on? You're like, how much time do you have?
Exactly.
Yeah. So I'm just going to get right into it, which is what people always say in the podcast. We're going to get right into it. Yeah, that's kind of why we're here. But how did you get, you're in this business where you're controlling everything, soup to nuts, et cetera. How did you decide this is what I want to do? How did you get in the business in the first place, nearly 20 years ago?
So I didn't get into the business with a decision so much, at least not certainly choices were made, but I don't think that I knew what I was doing when I started.
You fell into it.
I did, and I actually got started in politics.
Okay.
And I was in college, and I was working on some campaigns, helping with PR conferences and doing a lot of operations of logistics of movements of political tours. And from there, evolved into the fashion industry.
Okay.
Which I found equally as toxic.
Politics, they say politics is Hollywood for ugly people, and then fashion is just for the beautiful people, but toxic on both sides.
The situations I designed myself to be in certainly were, and it's not the case all around. But it certainly taught me over time the importance of intentionality in terms of who I'm willing to engage in exchanges with. That kind of was what took me into live entertainment. I have a passion mostly for making places feel warm and inviting, not just in my own home, but in the spaces that I help to create for others. I think it's very important. And starting out where I did, I learned so much about what not to do.
That's good. Sometimes it's better to know what not to do than what to actually do. In my business, besides this, I'm an auctioneer and MC. And I ask people all the time, obviously there's no live events, so I've been staring into a computer trying to raise money as an auctioneer for charities and so on. But I got into that by accident as well. And it was somebody didn't show up for an event where I was hosting and they were supposed to do the auction. So I jumped on stage and did it and just sort of improv and had some fun with it. But since then, I've asked people, okay, who can I call out? Like, who are the big donors that have the egos they want to be recognized for their generosity? And more importantly, who doesn't? What shouldn't I do? I want to make sure I stay away from those people because you could almost offend somebody more who wants to remain anonymous than somebody who is raising their hand and then you call them out by name, or you don't call them out by name, or you get their name wrong. It's like you can offend them equally on the other side. But you've been doing this since 2002, and as you said, you've learned a lot what to do, what not to do, and you've seen a lot of things toxic and obviously non-toxic in what you're doing now. You've chosen this route in the live events field. But when you started in the business in 2002, the world was reeling from 9/11 and people didn't want to travel. Everybody was on edge. And here we are now in 2020. Nobody wants to travel. Everybody's on edge again. But it's different now. I mean, can you compare the two world-changing events that canceled all the events out there?
I could certainly compare them. I think that we often keep reliving these same cycles and coming back to the same truths at deeper levels every single time. And the comparison, or at least the like continuity in message that I am experiencing over and over again, is the necessity of connection and community, and also the necessity of being hyper aware of the space you're inviting the community into before you do it. Just making sure that, you know, your own side of the street and what you're creating, the stages you're building, the platforms you intend to amplify on are in alignment with what you truly intend to support and do in this world.
Know your audience, right? kind of a basic thing, but people forget that. They're like, oh, we can have a music fest here. It's like, whoa, this is a residential. What are you doing? Like, do you even know this neighborhood? Do you know what we're doing here? Like, you can't have a festival here in the middle. This is not where you got to know what's going on. Sometimes it's the politics of the area. I imagine when you're trying to find a venue for if it's going to be an outdoor festival, for instance, the trouble with finding that, how difficult it is if there's any neighbors or anything where things need to shut down early. I mean, what have you found over the years about trying to find, just with the venue part? You've hosted so many festivals.
Mm-hmm.
Is that one of the most difficult things to do, is to find the actual field or stadium or venue?
No. The most difficult part is navigating precisely what you just talked about. A lot of what I've done, specifically in Atlanta for about the last 10 years, most of the large festivals, outdoor festivals that come through Atlanta take place in Piedmont Park. And
Piedmont Park.
Mm-hmm. And you know, if you look back at the history of the park, you'll see its intention as a gathering space for large events. And if you look at its use over time and its current use, it's continued to be utilized in that way, and it's a really beautiful outdoor space in the center of downtown Atlanta that's surrounded by Atlanta's wealthiest. It's a beautiful park smack dab in a historic residential district in Atlanta. And so the difficult part is understanding that these people live here now, and their voice absolutely matters.
So you put your politics hat back on.
I spent 10 years being in front of these neighborhood community meetings, learning the hard way, and still learning to this day how to sit and just listen and let people be heard, and not let my own triggers, the people yelling at me, and not become the center because they're yelling at the problem. And in this case of the New York example, what's not being discussed is the problem, and it's not. Our society designs us to be mad at the wrong thing, so we don't pay attention to what actually needs to be done. And so for me, events and politics, you cannot extract the two. In fact, it's a big part of what I do when I do come into an area, for a venue, not just to hear those that have the bandwidth to come to those meetings and speak their truth. And it's important for me to make space to go and find the ones who don't have that bandwidth to speak, to make sure that they're actually heard.
Right.
And it's in there that we find a whole lot of barriers that prevent them being heard overall. And that's the opportunity for policy reform. So event producers have the opportunity to make sure they're listening to the most marginalized in an area, and then making sure, if they're planning to do business, that they can support that municipality to ensure that code ordinances are in alignment with that as well.
It's amazing. You've been involved in so many fests, from politics and so on. I just want to go through a couple of the big ones. The OC Bike Fest. Now, obviously, when you say the OC, everybody knows you're talking about Ocean City, Maryland, right? Yeah, I think we can all agree with that. But you handle everything from the layout, and we talked about finding the venue, the talent booking, the catering, soup to nuts. So when you step in to plan one of these, like the OC Bike Festival, what's the first step that you do when you're like, we're going to have a festival, or a client calls you to say, Mimi, I've seen what you've done with other festivals. We want to hire you. Here's the idea. Run with it.
Yeah, so OC Bike Fest, for clarity, my involvement there is strictly around the artist, the entertainment and concert component of it. And so when it comes to the venue selection and the operations and the production of the entire event, I'm not involved in, or I was not involved in that entire process. A good example of one, though, that I am would be the Atlanta Jazz Festival, which is a festival that's owned by the city of Atlanta. And
it is a free festival, right?
It is free and open to the public. Its original intention was supported by Atlanta's first Black mayor, Maynard Jackson, and it's meant to be a gift to that community, and that intention is very much a central part of that festival's existence today. So that would be one that I could provide some answers to the question you initially asked me. Time to go. We got to start, effectively from scratch, and you start by listening. You start by listening to the client and understanding their intentions. Then you just amplify that circle of connection until you hit all the stakeholders involved. And from there, you work on strategy. And then each step of the conversation, has to start with everyone in agreement about core values, so that every step of the way, we can ensure that the entire process is actually being built in alignment with what we agree upon.
And I love what you just said there, your core values. You say on your website that when you plan these events, you keep in mind that ethos of environmental sustainability and human empowerment. My question for that sounds lovely, but how do you do that when it comes to cost cutting or security measures or so on? How do you keep that in the front of your mind while also saying we're going to plan this incredibly safe and friendly event for the entire community? Is it 50,000 people a day would attend that?
At the Atlanta Jazz Festival, yes.
Amazing.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you do that?
Particularly with that festival, which because it is free and non-ticketed and it's government owned, and the government takes we must get through to produce that one. Very little resources. That one takes what it takes to actually get stuff done, which is hard. And what that requires is ensuring that everybody that is involved in the process is nourished. And if we don't have money, you've got to feed them. I think that something that Jazz Festival I've watched evolve, especially as it has gained access to more resources over the years. I've watched it evolve in its capacity to hold space for the ones that are making the show happen. So the volunteers and the crew and the artists that are performing and the tour bus drivers that are driving the artists to the venue, that every person along the way we're taking time to listen to what they need and meeting that to the best of our capacity. And it takes a lot more when you don't have money to just meet those needs.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, but then that's where you find heart, because as long as you speak what the needs are, you find creative answers when you meet them.
So you said volunteers, so the community is involved. I believe this is the nation's largest free jazz festival. So you have people, do they volunteer for security? I guess this is my question. I guess with a jazz fest, everyone's going to be kind of chill and jazzy, but you still need crowd control, the flow, at least getting people. It's like at a football game or something, when your team wins, everybody is happy to leave the stadium, but there's still some elements. There's still, if there's alcohol being served, there's issues there.
Security, things like that would never be an appropriate place for a volunteer. Volunteer is really about the community engagement, and so they're public facing and like an info booth around the festival site, just to help, with wayfinding and connection and whatever else a patron may find themselves in need of. But no, as it relates to security, if somebody is, if an event producer is going to make the bold decision to bring that many human lives together, they need to ensure that they have their side of the street clean enough to hold that space. So, you got to make sure that security and
EMS
that all of the needs are met intentionally, and recognizing intentions of an event means that, security for me shouldn't look like panthers hiding in the dark. These should be Department of Are You Okay people that have the capacity to meet whatever needs show up.
Yeah, and that's going forward after what we've seen this year with social justice movement and the amount of young people involved with that, and then the amount of young people that are going to go back to festivals next year. I think let's say fourth quarter next year, there's live, outdoor, large, young people festivals, music festivals happening across all music genres. And what is the policing situation going to look like there? Let's call it that. Or security. As you said, if anybody is doing this on a professional level, they're going to bring in professional security. And, I wonder if, will there be one, that message of safety, but two would a police presence be something that would be welcome at these events to keep them safe? Or is the future of these events private security, well-trained, based on the people that are going to be there?
I think that depends on the event producer, and I, should be clear that as I'm talking about different events that I worked on, I don't speak for any of them because I'm not ultimately the end client in those. But I think that the answer to your question, OC Bike Fest, for example, their security would probably look a lot different than the Atlanta Dogwood Art Festival. I think it's the stakeholders that are involved that are going to influence what that presence looks like. If you're asking me specifically what that would look like, that it's not uniformed in a visual militarized way. It's visually uniform in that you know who to look for to ask for support. And these are people that know how to offer support, and know how to know the various options, and have the proper means of communication to get the unique support that unique situation requires.
Yeah. There is a uniform. It is clear who the people are in the yellow shirts or the red shirts, or pick a color shirt, that those are the people you go to if there's any problem at all, medical situation, et cetera. That's your first line of defense and security. All right, well, let's move away from the in-person events because we're just brainstorming here on what could be, what the future, back in-person live events. But your website, again, also talks about event design and program design, but you talk about your digital services first, product design and so on. Now, have you been able to take any of your festival clients online, digital, virtual this year, or at least parts of any of them?
Right now, what we've been working on is specifically supporting artists. And so who we're helping get online are the artists that weren't making a lot of money performing in venues that aren't open anymore. And they need online platforms to be able to do so. And so what we've been doing is supporting artists in creating really simplified, mobile-friendly websites for them with quick links to all of their, SoundCloud, whatever it is that they've got, and integrating functionality so that if they've got a live performance, that can happen straight from their unique website we've created for them, and people can be listening to their performance while also shopping the virtual merchandise booths that we create for these artists as well.
Merch.
And that merch, we have found a way for artists to be able to get a revenue stream. Right. I mean, just yesterday we had an artist do an hour live stream and end up with several $100s in merchandise sales that they weren't expecting when they woke up that morning. And so that's where we're putting our focus right now, is supporting creative shifting along with this virtual world.
Excellent. And what has the success been with that? Have people come back to you and said, like, immediately, like, we can't believe that people are engaging us this way? And on top of that, financially, like, we're doing pretty well here.
Yeah, so what we're finding is that it's meeting a lot of needs for artists who are still having to utilize standard social platforms, but have a desire to move away from them. And so we're integrating them on their own domain, and meeting that specific need for them in that way. They are picking up speed and being able to perform again. You know, I think people are getting a little bit tired with the online performance stuff, and so we're having to keep finding new ways to engage. But and that's requiring thinking about the little nuances of the experiences that people miss when they're not there. And creating this merch booth option has been really fun, because we've got a way for these artists to not have to buy their product in advance, and it's all, you know, direct to garment printing. As soon as a customer places an online order, your fulfillment is done for them, shipping is done for them, so they never have to get in the middle of it, but can start making money right now. And that it's becoming a word of mouth thing. We've not been actively advertising yet, so that we can pace ourselves with our own bandwidth. Got a 5-year-old at home that we've got to navigate all of this with.
Navigate, pivot, all these great
Yes.
quarantine buzzwords that we've all come to know. And yeah, people are getting, I mean, there definitely is the zoomed out, perhaps, is a way to say it, or just the fatigue, the virtual fatigue. They can't wait. Today was a great day with somebody, a volunteer at a hospital, a nurse volunteer. I mean, how poetic is that? That the people that have been on the front lines throughout all this are the first ones to step up and say, I will be, I don't want to say guinea pig, because that sounds like an insult in a way. But what I mean by that is somebody who's saying, yeah, I believe in the science. I believe in the trials, and I've lived through this since March. So I want to see the end of this faster than anybody else. And I want to get back to my normal shift of 10 hours a day, which is already exhausting working at the hospital. But I can't wait to get back to that. So let me be the first one to take a shot in the arm, and then I'll do it 2 weeks later, and you can monitor me every day, and we can see how this works out. But do you think when we come back that you're going to have festivals like the 75,000 person per day Midtown Music Fest? Is that something that, because if we're talking about a year from now, you're already planning that. Is that something where you're going in front of a community board right now and saying, hi, I know this isn't until next year, but we need to talk about this now. We're going to have 75,000 people a day. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time. Okay, next, what's on the agenda? Are those conversations happening now?
I am not involved with that festival moving forward. And so, I mean, I don't know if they're happening. I have relocated to Colorado, and what I'm doing is focusing on my immediate surroundings for the time being, and kind of shifted away from a lot of my Atlanta or East Coast projects to focus where I am right now and kind of get present here.
Okay.
And focus on some of the local social policies that I can see that I can provide some support with.
Hold on, is this breaking news? Is Mimi Renee getting back into politics? Are we hearing it first here live on festivalPass Stories?
Yeah, I mean, I never left it, because for me, again, events, you cannot extract the two. But moving from Atlanta to a 92% white community with a biracial daughter.
I heard it's 93.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Gotta check your numbers.
Yeah, whatever that may be. It's been really humbling for me, and it reminds me constantly of my responsibility to action in ensuring that places that I agree to exchange energy in are walking in alignment with what they communicate their values are. And so I'm just doing what I know how to do, which is to survey the plans and see where the holes are, and sometimes loudly offer solutions when they're not being heard. And that's what I'm doing.
Find that wheel that needs to be squeaky, make it squeaky, and give it the grease as well. Do it all. Sometimes that wheel doesn't have the means to speak up for itself.
That's the point.
Even if they have an elected official speaking for them, that elected official sometimes has their own agenda and is using this as a stepping stone to get somewhere else. So we're grassroots now.
Well, precisely, and I think a really important thing for people who are doing grassroots stuff to notice is whether the community they live in even has formal means of communication to their elected officials and to their city representatives. And if there's not a plan there, that's where you start. There's got to be a means to hold people accountable.
I think one thing that a lot of politicians in major cities missed was, all right, well, look, the kids just have to go to school virtually and that's it. So we're working with the teachers to make sure that they have the curriculum to get to the kids. And it's like, can I ask a question? What about the kids that don't have a laptop or can't afford a laptop or don't have Wi-Fi? How are they? They cannot be left on the sidelines. And is anybody speaking up for them? And when this all happened, it seemed that the answer to that was no. I mean, that's something we all know about now. But I would say myself, I didn't think that. I figured, doesn't everybody at least has a phone or something? And it's like, how can you learn on a phone when there's all the other distractions coming in on the phone, updates, texts, calls, and so on? But just that there were some people who really stepped up, professional athletes and so on, to make sure that kids in certain communities had what they needed. And it's just, I guess it's sad, but also exciting when private citizens step in to do the philanthropy that the elected officials aren't doing because they're just staring at budgets or whatever it is. But I guess that's kind of what philanthropy is. It's when the private sector steps up and takes a chance on something that we can't really do with public money. But these are basic things. So well done to you. Keep up with that. And while we're tipping our cap to you, I just wanted to read a quote I saw about you, that Mimi is the festival manager that we all want to work for or hire as our own, comprehensive, open-minded, and as creative as they come. It's a pleasure to serve on her team. This was from, I'm going to guess that this person now, probably a client who's now a friend of yours, John Antonucci. He from Rival Entertainment said this about you. And as I said earlier, that the talented people in this business have the hardware to show it. So I said, Emmy award-winning event producer. Where did the Emmy come from? How did you, when this came about, what was that like?
So the
and I should say, and why isn't it in the background? It should be on top of the tree instead of the star. Have the Emmy on top of the tree. But is that there? I didn't even realize that it was on top of the tree. That's weird how it got there.
So what you're saying right now is something that I'm allowing myself for the first time to even acknowledge. So this Emmy is not mine alone, and it's one part of a massive crew of people who the whole show, the whole production won. This was for an outdoor concert, well, sort of festival that was broadcast live in Georgia for a 4th of July event in 2013, I believe. And for the longest time, because it wasn't a singular named Emmy, I didn't allow myself to even accept it or accept that I was a part of it. And it wasn't until recently, as we're going through updating our website. It's recently evolved from Elk Events into Next Week Productions. I'm going through all of these things that have occurred in this timeline of my life and starting to name them for what they were, because I did win an Emmy, and so did a lot of other people as well. but it's okay for me to acknowledge that.
Yes.
This is
Celebrate
a whole new thing. It's a whole new thing.
Celebrate it.
Yes.
It is a team achievement, of course, but you know, you've got a trophy there to acknowledge that. So put it on top of the tree. Come on. So now the company, it's funny that you're now in Colorado and it's no longer Elk Productions. I would think Elk would be a great name for Colorado, but what is next? When I hear Next Week Productions, that sounds like you're like, we're ready to go. We're ready to go next week. Call us with your last minute details. We can pull something off for you. So it sounds like you guys you're ready to go at the drop of the hat. But what was the inspiration for the name Next Week Events? Was it just something that people are like, oh yeah, our thing is next week, and you're like, why is everybody coming to us last minute? Was that it, or was it something else?
It's something else.
Okay.
It's something maybe a little sweeter, a little more intimate.
A little futuristic.
It is, I suppose. You know, the Next Week Productions is not just me. I have a partner named Christopher Lee, who is both a business and creative, and also a life partner. And at the height of, well, around April of this year, he was living in downtown Denver, and right outside of his windows, that's where, you know, tear gas was being thrown. You know, the protests were happening, and he's you know, he likes to we had to get him out of that situation, because he's very much politically active, and you know, chooses to be a player and everything. And so we're moving it a little more strategic, and for the 5-year-old that we've got, and have taken ourselves out of tear gas and are, you know, back in politics, but also back in doing everything that we know to do. Chris was a touring musician. He's the one that does most of the digital design for us as well. And when we got him out of the tear gas and into the suburbs to kind of help regroup around big political strategy, we had to stop for a moment and take a breather and get centered in ourselves before we re-engaged in action. And one of us in that moment was just like, you know what, we'll be productive next week. So,
I like that.
Your Next Week Productions.
I love that. That is an awesome explanation. It's take a breather. You know, I have this new iWatch, or Apple Watch, I should say. That's how new it is. I don't even know the real name. But it reminds me every day to breathe. The health stuff on it, this is not a promotion for it or endorsement, but kind of. It just tells me to breathe every day for like a minute. And if I can, I do it, or I make sure. And it really is a world of difference. You got to just sometimes, especially right now, the world's about to change again, completely. New administration coming in. Well, as far as we know, new administration coming in. Somebody won't acknowledge that there is a new administration coming in, but let's just say, for all intents and purposes, there is a new administration coming in. People are getting vaccines very soon. World is changing. How are we going to get ready for that? I think at the end of this year, everybody needs to just really take that breath. Take a day off, be with family, whatever it is. Of course, socially distance still. Don't go out, enjoying a party of 500 people, but take that time and really breathe. So I love that. Next week we'll do it. Next week we'll be productive. Right now we need to concentrate on ourselves. So I love it. So on that note, you've produced music and arts festivals, fashion trade shows, political rallies, press conferences. We've covered pretty much all of these so far. The corporate retreats we haven't talked about so much, but galas, that's my world, in the philanthropic gala, the charity gala, and award ceremonies, some of which you've taken home hardware yourself, leadership summits, retreats, speaker series. You have covered the gamut. Commencement ceremonies. Mm-hmm. I know parents say that they don't have a favorite child. You have a 5-year-old, I think. So you said, right? So you have a favorite child there, but okay, parents say, oh, we don't have a favorite. They lie. They do. They know who their favorite is. Going forward, if you pick it up and have another festival to work on in the near future, what would be the ideal festival for you to work on? What would be your favorite thing to do?
My favorite thing to do would be to bring to life the festival that I've been designing for the last couple of years that just works to reflect how I envision these things can work in a new society, not a return to what was before, besides intentionality and gathering and understanding that community and connection is why we all exist.
I always have a bit that we like to end with, I like to call COVID confidential. I think I need some lounge music for that, which we don't have the budget for, but let's just pretend it's loungy, it's COVID confidential. Here we are, COVID after dark, if you will. During this time, you've done a lot. You have moved, been working on this new business plan. Any superpowers that you've learned? Are you a world-class chef and you didn't know it? Did you learn a foreign language, or did that come back to you? Or perhaps you picked up the guitar and you were like, I can really rock out. Wow, I can read music really well. Is there anything like that you figured out that I cannot believe that I'm really good at this? Or something that you always said that you would do, you've started it in March-ish and you're still doing it today?
Yes. There are three things: meditation,
okay,
a return to dance, and moving my body to keep energy flowing, and shadow work, trauma work.
And you said dance. What kind of dance are we talking about? Is it me in front of the TV doing 80s dances? Are we talking about TikTok dances? Are we talking about interpretive dance? What are we talking about?
We're talking about me in my kitchen and, using whatever mobility I still have in my stiff body right now to just move freely to whatever it is that I need to listen to at that moment.
Maybe the Apple Watch has something about dance in it that I can learn. I bet it does. It does. It's got a little something for everything. Walking, you can track your walking and so on. Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, how can we find out more about you and more about Next Week Productions?
Yeah, you are very encouraged to go visit us at nextweekproductions.com. You can sign up for our newsletter there, and we'll keep you posted about the fun things we're creating, the creatives we are amplifying, and hope that we'll be able to all see everybody healthy in the real land one day soon.
From your lips to God's ears, please bring it back strong. We all can't wait for it. Ladies and gentlemen, friends of festivalPass Stories, she is Next Week Productions, but sadly, I can't interview her again next week unless you want to come back and promote something, or we can get an update on some gifts under the tree or something like that. But I understand your time is valuable, so we're going to let her go. It's Mimi, Renee, Next Week Productions. Check them out, and we will see you guys next time on festivalPass Stories.
This is festivalPass Stories, a podcast series is told by the people who create and make festivals come to life. You will go behind the stage, kitchen, or studio door to hear the stories of passion and inspiration that started some of the world's most beloved festivals. Hear the startup stories and how an idea went from what if to what's next.